Zachary Taylor was born on the 24th of November 1784 and became the 12th President of the United States in March 1849. Taylor came from Orange County, Virginia, and spent about 40 years in the Army before becoming President. He had very little formal education but was taught by his mother to read and write. He was the fifth son in a family of 8 and came from a prominent Virginia plantation family who moved westward to Kentucky when Taylor was an infant. In 1799, Taylor's father acquired about 10,000 acres of land in the Kentucky state along the Ohio River. He had about 30 enslaved people working for him. As a young man also, Taylor himself acquired a number of plantations in both Mississippi and Kentucky, and by the age of 30 had 200 enslaved people working on them. In 1810, he married Margaret Smith. They had 6 children. Taylor joined the U.S. Army at the age of 24, and 2 years later was promoted to the rank of captain. He became involved in the 1812 war with Britain and defended Fort Harrison in Indiana in September 1812. Here, 20 men defended the fort against over 500 Indians. This was the first victory for the United States in the 1812 war and was considered an outstanding achievement by Taylor. Soon after that, he was promoted to the rank of general by the age of 28. He dedicated his entire life to the army, and 20 years later, Taylor was promoted to the rank of colonel during the Black Hawk War. Here he achieved a number of significant victories which finished Indian resistance to U.S. expansion in the Northwest. By 1837, Taylor was involved in the Second Seminole War in Florida. He constructed a number of very strong fortifications in Florida which contributed to U.S. victories in the region. By 1838, Taylor was promoted to the rank of Brigadier General, which gave him the command of the entire U.S. Army in Florida. By the mid-1840s, the future of Texas had become a dominant issue in American politics. In March 1845, President Polk, in his inaugural address, had referred to 28 states, thereby implying that Texas was already part of the Union. In December 1845, he signed a bill which made Texas officially part of the United States. However, Texas claimed a vast territory in its western and northern side, which was never really part of the independent Texas. In March 1846, President Polk ordered Zachary Taylor into the disputed area. On the 8th of May and 9th of May in 1846, the battles of Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma took place. In September, Taylor crossed the Rio Grande and inflicted severe losses on the Mexican forces in the Battle of Monterrey. In February 1847, Taylor achieved another decisive victory at the Battle of Buena Vista. After these victories, he was being compared with Washington and Andrew Jackson. In all these battles, the United States lost about 440 men to over 1,200 men on the Mexican side. Mexico also lost about 1/3 of its territory. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in February 1848 recognized the new situation. The Mexican cession was a vast area of territory which included California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and a part of Colorado and New Mexico. This was a monumental territory, vastly greater and richer than most countries in the world, and it was now part of the United States. Zachary Taylor was seen as a national hero, and by the middle of 1848 was offered the Whig Party nomination for president. He campaigned with Millard Fillmore and won the election with about 1.3 million votes to 1.2 million for Lewis Cass of the Democratic Party. Ex-President Martin Van Buren also ran in this election for the Free Soil Party, but he only got about 10% of the popular vote. However, not much was known about Taylor's political beliefs at this time, which was an advantage really in that various elements of the Whig Party could unify around him. From previous speeches and his inaugural address, however, it was obvious he believed in both preserving the Union and restricting slavery. He also believed in a low tariff and that the president should only veto legislation which he believed to be unconstitutional. In regard to slavery, he was a moderate. He seen the abolitionist movement as a threat to the Union, but he also believed that slavery should not be allowed to spread into the new territories. In the election, he won about 47% of the popular vote, which converted into 163 electoral college votes out of 290. Although he was the first president to serve without having held any previous political office, he was immediately confronted with a number of major political issues. The territory won from Mexico was of central importance. California was about to enter the Union. The Texas-New Mexican border was still to be decided, and underlying all this was the emotive issue of slavery. In Taylor's view, the best way forward was to admit California as a state rather than as a federal territory, as this would avoid the emotional discussion about slavery in Congress. He sent Thomas Butter King to California and found that the Constitutional Convention was already underway there, and that Californians generally would decide to both join the Union and to ban slavery within their borders. Another issue which was not settled was the size of the state of Texas. The Texan governor, Peter Bell, attempted to acquire New Mexico as part of a very much enlarged Texas. However, the president resisted this and supported New Mexico's claim to be a separate state. Towards the end of 1849, the president informed Congress that both California and New Mexico had applied to join the Union as free states. However, this alarmed Southern congressmen who realized that this would upset the balance between free and slave states in Congress and could eventually lead to slavery being declared illegal. As a result, no immediate progress was made. However, the great compromiser Henry Clay began working on a package of bills designed to allay Southern fears and maintain the Union. These bills, which were later known as the Compromise of 1850, allowed California to join the Union as a free state. The slave trade was also banned in Washington, D.C. The fugitive law obliged all states to return runaway slaves, and the remainder of the Mexican cession was divided into two territories of New Mexico and Utah. These two territories would be organized and the issue of slavery in them settled later. The compromise also decided the Texas-New Mexico new border. The compromise was designed basically to avert war between the free and slave states, but it also left unresolved the issue of slavery in the territories of Utah and New Mexico, to be solved later. In relation to foreign affairs, both the United States and Britain were anxious to expand international trade. The new Secretary of State, John Clayton, agreed the Clayton-Bulchern Treaty with Britain. This treaty agreed to the construction of a canal across Nicaragua to join the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Both nations basically agreed to allow the use of the canal to all other nations, and they also agreed among themselves not to build any new colonies in the area. This treaty never went into effect and was superseded by another treaty in 1891. President Taylor also agreed to an additional new governmental department, the Department of the Interior. This department was headed by the former Secretary of the Treasury, Thomas Ewing. President Taylor died after 16 months in office. On the 4th of July 1850, he attended the national celebrations in Washington. Afterwards, he ate ice cream and cherries. Shortly thereafter, he developed very severe stomach aches and died 5 days later on the 9th of July 1850.